republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Josh, send his regrets.
Thanks everybody for coming in. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment. This time we take one. Okay. Public. Thank you. Consent items. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mike Lean. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion.
Well, I should have pulled this off, but I'm just wondering how many science teachers do we have that are pregnant for which?
Two. Yeah.
So there are two, because I saw they had different start dates, and
Yes.
you have two part-time, two long-term subs to cover the load for each of them.
So we have one at the high school who just had her baby yesterday or the day before.
Okay.
So she's out through the end of the school year.
Okay.
We posted for a long-term sub, was not able to find any subs, so we reached out to, that would be Peggy and Beth,
Okay.
who are covering, they're splitting that one teacher's class.
I see.
And the same thing's happening at middle school.
Got it. Okay, that is,
Did the adoption go through?
Not yet.
thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Michael, you good on that now?
There's a lot of subs.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like
It's a lot of science, I was excited.
Okay, so we had a motion, we had a second, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Discussion items, MNVA update, Jill? Nice
Well,
to
good
see you this
evening.
evening.
Well, thank you. So I'm here primarily to talk about Alex and our use of it in the school. So as you remember, last year we talked about needing to have interventions in remedial level classes in math. And so that's what Alex has been for us. I know Todd's using it at the high school as well. So we're kind of learning together in terms of how to best utilize it. We're using it in grades 4 through basically 9th grade in high school, up through Algebra 1. And they're all using it slightly differently because of the grade levels and that kind of thing. But we're seeing tremendous success. You know, it really varies by classroom to classroom. We've got about 160 seats. We started off with 100 and we just kept finding good uses for it and wanting to add more students to it. So I kept knocking on Corinne's door asking if we could buy more seats and buy more seats. So we kept looking at the budget to see if we could. And we've used all 160 seats. Of those, I mean, teachers are basically asking me, can we continue this program? We love what it's doing for our kids. We want to use it next year. So we're still kind of working through the budgetary side of that in terms of what that means for next year. But the way that it's working in our classrooms now is it's essentially a replacement class for the K-12 classes. So all these grade levels have like a 4th grade math, 5th grade math, 6th grade math. We're using Alex for those kids that are not at grade level and they're struggling so badly in their grade level course that they need to have a lot of remediation brought in. What Alex does really well is it teaches that grade level content, but it allows you very easily to bring in lower level skills into that class to get them where they need to be so that they can continue to grow. And so what we've done is taken those kids that are that very low grouping of kids. When we do our fast bridge screening at the beginning of the school year, these kids are probably about the 30th percentile or lower. So if they're that low, we're sliding them into this Alex class. And so it's a replacement class completely. It's aligned to Minnesota standards, and the kids work through that based on their ability levels. If they test out and it shows that that skill is something they already have, they don't need to do the work on it. If they need, you know, lower level skills, 3rd grade skills, for example, it allows the teachers to bring those in. In all of our classrooms at this point, we're seeing at least 20% growth on average in the classrooms, upwards to about 50%. Some classes have seen huge growth. Like one of our 5th grade teachers has almost 60-some% growth on average for her students. And that's unheard of. So what that means is not only are they growing within their grade level, but they've also mastered those lower level skills in addition to get them to where they need to be. So this has been a phenomenal program in terms of getting kids caught up and closer to grade level. So I don't know if you've got questions particularly about how we're using it or
You can, on that, do you feel that because of it, it's gonna reduce our dropout rate, if you wanna call it that, loss in kids. I mean, now, because in the past, it's always been that
Yeah.
those kids are usually the ones that struggle, and then they eventually just say, I'm out of here.
I think we're still seeing, there's a couple things going on. I think the younger grades, I'm hoping that what you described will happen. I think we're seeing some success, that those kids are starting to feel successful, they're getting caught up, that they're gonna feel better about being able to stay. So I'm hoping that that's the case. We still have the same engagement issue that we have, whether it's a K-12 course or ALEX. I mean, whatever we give to them, if they choose not to log in and do it, there's not a lot that we can do other than, trying to reach out. So we still have a lot of that issue going on, especially at the high school level. But even, I would say 7th and 8th grade, they're kind of struggling. So I'm not sure that, I was kind of hoping that because it was, the instruction was different than the K-12 instruction, that maybe it would be the one way that kind of grabs kids and gets them excited. And I think it has for some kids, but I think we also have a lot of kids that it doesn't really matter what the platform is, they're just checking out.
How quickly would you anticipate seeing a result in like an MCA math score or something?
I'm actually curious, I really want to see what our MCAs are this year, especially in 4th and 5th grade. Seeing what we saw in terms of the growth for these kids that were in it. I want to actually take a look at what their last year's scores were, if we have that data, and then see where they tested this year to see how much growth they had. We didn't have a lot of kids this year in 4th and 5th grade in ALEX. In terms of total percentage, I would say it's probably, I think we only have 50 some seats that we're using in both of those grades in elementary, so it's not a huge portion of our population. But I want to compare it student by student if we can, just to see how much gain it's had.
So then with using all 160 seats, it would be another year before we could really see the lag indicator, as it were.
Right, and there are some kids that are making huge gains. They came in maybe at 9% mastery of the content of that grade level, and now they're at 90%. So some have made huge gains. Some have not. At the high school level, if they're coming in really low, sometimes they have skills that are really far back. So to get them caught up is going to be a multi-year process.
Yeah. And so this is not a K-12 product. This is something we're adding on top of. So
Correct.
what? And it's a replacement course. So then they are not in the D2L or in their program, their course, their curriculum there. So I don't know, it just seems like we're paying for a lot of curriculum and now we're paying for some more that's effective. So when are we gonna get K-12 to say, we'll go with
Well,
ALEX?
what they did for us this year, so because it's a replacement course, K-12 has allowed us to use it as a replacement because they've basically said, our math courses are not aligned to Minnesota standards, we're not offering you what you need, so we're going to allow you to use something else in place of it. So this year, we're not paying for those K-12 courses for those kids who are in ALEX,
Okay,
we're just paying for the ALEX seats.
okay,
Next year, because they've agreed to rewrite all of our math courses at grades 4 through 8 for us, they're basically saying, we're gonna be giving you what you need now, so now we don't want you using ALEX as a replacement course. So that's where we're figuring out the money side of it. We still wanna use it as an intervention.
Yeah.
So we'll still use the K-12 course that they're writing. And I think we're still gonna have a lot of kids that are gonna have them in that course plus this intervention, and that speaks to what you were saying in terms of paying for both of them. And there's a lot of programs that we do that with. We have Study Island right now that, we end up paying for both seats for kids. We have Read Naturally, we have Reflex Math. So there's a lot of intervention programs that we're using. IXL. It's just that ALEX is really, really good at what it does, and it's kind of expensive.
well, I don't have a problem if we're seeing results and we're meeting identified needs. We've talked many times about the need to support students that are deficient in one area or the other, but I'd like K-12 to to flex the budget or give us some latitude within their budget when we're seeing success. So they're gonna write this curriculum and align it with Minnesota standards, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay, and
It's in the process of being written. They will have it ready for us. The goal is to have the 4th and 5th grade classes done a week before our back to school in service. So I think that would be August 20th.
Yep.
And having the first semester of the 6th and the 7th grade classes done at that same date. The second semester for 6th and 7th grade would be done the very beginning of October.
How is that getting reviewed to make sure that it's gonna do what we want it to do? or is it just we're
You
leaving it
guys
up
will
to
be
them?
looking at that, right?
Yeah.
You know, I
We
mean,
were
are we,
just talking about that visibility sometimes is hard for us to have. Like even getting the course visible to us a week before class starts, that doesn't give us a lot of time
No.
to get into it, especially from a teacher standpoint. You know, understanding how this new course is different than what they were doing last year, make changes that they need to. So it's not ideal, but we're hoping that we can get things like alignment documents, scope and sequences, those types of things that at least kind of give us a picture of what the course will look like.
have we talked about maybe letting them use what you're using now as a
That's-
transition? You know, meaning that you have X amount of people in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making a new, can we just
Well, that's.
move the kids through that? Keep the kids we have using this program
And not
and then
charge us.
not charge us until we know for sure that the courses that you're giving us are gonna meet the standards that we feel
Well,
we
I mean, if
need.
you can let the data say, if there is a if there is some way to align, you know, the progress with some improved test scores, that does well for K-12 in the state of
Yes.
Minnesota as
And
well.
that's originally our spiel was the courses you have right now, you admittedly, they're not aligned to Minnesota standards. And Alex is. Could we just use Alex in place of the K-12 courses for 4th through 7th grade? That was the original request. And then they came back and it blew me out of the water because we've been asking for Minnesota specific courses for years and they just said, no, that's not something we can do. And they came right back and said, oh no, we're planning on making Minnesota classes for you. And I said, oh, okay.
And what grades are you now? So you started in 4th and 5th and at the beginning of your, I lost, so how many grades are now have students in Alex right now?
So 4th through 8th,
Fourth.
and then it's those kids, at high school, the way we're using it is those kids who did not pass Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, which is the
Okay.
requirement. So they're basically coming into high school lacking that Algebra 1 requirement.
Okay.
Those kids are in it for high school.
But we can't have math credit in Algebra 1 in high school. Algebra 1 cannot generate a high school credit.
It's an
Unelective.
elective.
Well, and it has to go beyond, Algebra 1, because if it was just Algebra 1 and we gave it an elective for high school kids, we would have to give every 8th grader taking Algebra 1 an elective high school credit. So it's gotta have other higher level in it than just the 8th grade class.
Does Alex do a good job of tracking in terms of logging on? You said if they didn't log on, so you know how much time they're spending into Alex?
Yeah, in fact, I can show you this. I didn't make copies. It's kind of hard to read. This first page, this shows you, so all of our different courses are listed here. This will tell you the number of students that are in it. This will tell you the average of the class. So if a class has 30 kids in it, one kid might log in for an hour, one might log in for 70, but this will tell you the average. This was their beginning score, and this is their ending score, and then the percentage. So this is what I get as an administrator. Then as a teacher, you get this, and this one's really hard to read, but this is, the initial assessment is down here, and you can see for this student came in at 9%. After all these assessments, the highest one now is at 80%. So this student has grown in the course of this time frame, and you can see just all the different graphs. So it tells you all of this information plus login history. It goes into standards in terms of just how each student is doing compared to a particular standard within that grade. I shouldn't say it, but that's more detail than anything we get from K-12.
Well, that's good.
Well, then we know our money's being spent for a program that has some,
Yeah.
has some teeth and has some.
And it's, with reading, there are so many different interventions that we have, and math was always the one where it was just, IXL is an intervention, but it's not easy to use. And it really doesn't do
Right.
the instruction that it needs to. There's fun games on it, but,
Yeah, there's a lot of interventions that are game-based, which again, I think there's a place for that, but sometimes you need to get a little more deeper than what you would in a game.
What's, you gotta buy it in terms of blocks for the seats, like 20 or 30 or?
Yeah, or some of our students are actually given the information so they can purchase a seat individually over the summer for themselves. If they are worried about losing math skills, they can actually individually go on and buy an account for the summer.
You said
You
there
have
were
any kids?
many reading interventions. So how is a decision made about which intervention to use with which kid? Or is it a grade level thing, or is it a teacher, or is it an infant? I'm just curious.
It's a combination of things. You know, teachers alone don't make that decision, but they'll do some research into some programs, and they'll basically make a pitch to me and the assistant principal for that area. And we'll take a look at what, you know, what that program says it does really well. If there's a demo account, we usually use that first and kind of play around with it to see if we like it. And then the first year, we'll maybe buy a few seats and try it out and see. And then based on the data that we get from those kids, we'll make a determination of whether to keep that program, look for something new, buy more seats of it.
And also all of those intervention programs are purchased by seats or blocks of seats.
Yep.
Where you think it can be a useful tool for
Exactly.
areas.
Any other questions?
No. Good. Anybody else have any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, water testing.
Okay, twofold here. One part is with the new state requirements, this is actually already part of policy 807. But we need to, as a district, create a model plan, and so I wanted to show you the model plan nope, that's the proposal, it's the model plan first. There, the model plan for lead testing. This is the model plan and the requirements of the plan and how it needs to be done, so that we're sure that we are following state recommendations, and this would be the plan that would be given to the Health and Safety Committee. According to the statute, the Health and Safety Committee for the school needs to have a plan that they would be following. So this would,
And so when are they gonna look at it?
the plan, health and safety, I already gave it, Todd is in charge of the Health and Safety Committee, so he's already looked at that, and the next component, so if you go to the IEA, this is the, plan from IEA to do this, and it does follow the model plan as far as what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it. This also gets into the prices. What we have to do is this first part about the lead testing, and that's the $1,475. That, by state requirement of statute, we need to test for lead and follow that methodology. The other things are things that we could add to it and things that Todd and I talked to IEA about. One is radium in the water testing, just to see what is coming into the building as far as the drinking water. And so that would be a $950 cost to actually test the drinking fountains for radium. And then the other is the mineral and metal scan. That would be another $725, and that one, we're really looking at the iron and the cadmium, nickel in the drinking water. Those are things that you could get from some of our galvanized pipes, and so that's why I would want, if we're gonna do the whole spectrum, we should probably test for all of that. But we can do just the lead, or we can do the whole kit and caboodle.
Well, my understanding, because we talked about this at the facility meeting, my understanding, we have been doing testing. It's a requirement every 5 years. It's just now they want us to do a policy letter on it. Correct? I mean, from what I
Well, we have to
understand
have a
is
procedure by
procedure
statute.
on it.
Procedure.
Right, but we've been doing testing. I mean, I want to make people think that
Yeah.
we've never tested our water before.
No,
we're just
no,
letting
we have,
people drink
we have
water.
tested the water
It's
before.
been being tested, it's just now we have to change and do this.
We have to do it every,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make that clarity, because some people may go, well, what the heck you mean?
And we're getting our water from the city, so it's gonna be radium high anyhow, because they're above.
I don't think the water, radium in the water is not, the little bit of research I did, it's the air.
Yeah.
And so we do radon test, and radium in the water would be different. So I was looking at radon, never mind, I
Yeah.
had my R's mixed up.
Yep.
Yeah,
You know, what's a,
an hour, water, radium.
I just, so is this the plan? Because I read through that model plan, and that model plan had a lot of places where you needed to make a decision. Where the district needed to make a decision to name somebody to do this
Right.
plan. Or are we just gonna say, if we go with IEA here, this is the plan, and that covers it all? So, or are we adopting the plan put forth by IEA?
Well, and that's why this is a discussion item. Do you want to have, we've already got the policy. So as far as the model plan that we want to use, do we want to adopt this as the state suggested model plan and then make sure IEA follows our plan? Or do you want to, looking at what IEA has proposed, use their proposal?
I guess I think it's the Health and Safety Committee, but I would like them to look at it and make a recommendation and let us know why they picked the one they picked.
Okay.
Because you've presented both of these to us, and there are things in here which are, you know, are you gonna do it, is somebody on site gonna be responsible for this, or are you gonna have an outside group doing it, and the things on the, you know, how long it takes to get the results, and where it's all written sort of in there. Those are just things that have to be sort of redacted or left in, depending on how we're doing it, unless the IEA plan covers all that. Is that committee gonna look at it? That's fine. I would just like to know what they're proposing, that we are, so we are aware of the procedure.
So is Todd doing that?
Including
assuming
in
this rough draft?
Excuse me. Yeah, including making a recommendation on whether all three of those should be done, or whether the lead testing is deemed, because we have been testing for things in the past, and you look at your historical data, if we haven't had anything that's been on the radar, maybe the lead is the requirement, we start with that, and we expand if necessary and as necessary, and or do we do the whole, all of it?
I know Todd, when he talked to us at the facility meeting, like he mentioned he'd like to do all of it. And it may be a line, you know, just a place to start. This is where it was at today, all three of these things.
A baseline.
Baseline, that's what I was trying to think, baseline of this is where all three are at. Because we're looking at replacing the pipes and some other things, and maybe after all that's done, we have that retested to see where that is now.
But those testings are done so many times a
It
year.
has to be done every 5 years, is what they're telling us.
Okay, but so we're doing a baseline that would be a baseline conducted annually for 5 years.
Well, that's up to right now, the requirements are we only have to do it once every
Every
5
5
years.
Oh, do it once every
Yeah.
5
Yes.
years, you don't have to test annually?
No.
According to
No.
this, it's once
No,
every
it-
5 years.
And that's what statute.
So we
is.
could develop a baseline and see where we're
Okay,
at, and then maybe
I
after we get
understand.
everything redone, then maybe have another check just to see if it's made any improvements because of the pipes that we have.
Yep.
It may make a difference.
Yep.
So.
Was the last one done 5 years ago, or?
No, it was-
Well,
it
this just started this requirement.
Right, and so
This
it
is
was
brand new.
tested,
Okay.
more than 5 years ago.
Yeah. So. Okay, anyway, does anyone have any more questions on that? And we'll have the committee come up with which way they wanna go as far as, procedure, correct?
Yeah.
FY 18 adjusted budget.
Well, the finance committee just went over this. Okay, so, I know as far as, there, thank you. As far as the bottom line, most people wanna just know the bottom line. If you go to the second page, and the very bottom right-hand corner, it looks as if we will finish the year 15,000 to the good, so. Of the different accounts we talked about, each of those, is there anything that any of the finance people want to add?
No, I think we've talked about it off and on throughout the year, so. Does anybody have any questions on it? Okay. Nothing, yes, that's good. Next, Houston Elementary Camera System petition.
This is to, install cameras. The first one, when you say the north side school door, it's, to do the cameras at the gym entrance. And the east side of the school for the tennis courts. It would also, we had an instance where there were some kids that shimmied up a pipe onto the roof, and so had we had a camera there, we would know who that was. So it's for added security. And those are areas of the school that don't have exterior cameras, and they're probably areas of the school that really need to have exterior cameras. And so that's a $12,758, and that we could use the maintenance money for that.
So and on top of this, I just wanna bring this up, because we've been discussing security at the schools to make sure we have everything covered. One of the things that it's part of our discussion has been the buzzer system for over at the grade school. We talked to Rick about it at the facility, correct, for Gary? And it was an additional $1,700 to get that put in. And that would be done at the same time, since I think it's the same company that's doing it. That was my correct, am I saying that correctly?
To put in, one of the buzzers on Rick's desk. So
he
the
can see.
little monitor with the buzz, so he can unlock the door instead of running out to Barb's office, because when Barb is away from her desk, that's the only one in the office. And so if Rick had one on his desk, he could also buzz people in.
So that was another addition that they talked about doing.
And how much?
1,700.
1,700, so that would bump the whole bill up to 14,400.
So once they put these in, is there do they got a maintenance that they're gonna do per year or anything on that?
As far as a fee for it?
Yeah.
No,
or-
but the custom alarm has come in and done most of the camera systems. So if we have an issue with it, we just call them and they,
Is there a warranty, like
yes,
5 years or
yes,
something?
yes.
And so
One-year
the
warranty.
east side
It's a one-year warranty.
So is there a camera that, I don't know which.
And there's a playground camera as well on this.
That's
So,
at the elementary?
yep,
Is there one on the side, like to the access to Summit? Is there a camera there?
I think
oh,
we
for
put-
the high school?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we had those in there last year.
Okay, I just-
Yes.
We put some in the back because there was some issues of.
okay.
so we've
And
got,
all those
we've got,
cameras, the feeds are working and
Yes.
they're all.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
talk about that.
Good.
I don't want to speak at it, but And
The
facility
exterior
committee.
cameras that we put in here last year at this building, Permar put them in because they could log into the system from that kind of distance. And it was a better quote than custom. And so we went with Permar,
So did you look at Permar for this?
yes. And this is the better of the quotes.
And we're trying to make sure they all tie in together.
Mhm.
And they do, when
Yes.
you have two different
Right.
systems.
And we're also, we discussed with Todd and Rick, about ensuring that both have access to both buildings. Meaning that if something were to happen here, God forbid, that Rick would be able to assume what, command and control type of situation over there and have the visual of this facility and vice versa. So they, in fact, we talked about having them do some testing, right, Gary?
Right, and they were gonna test it on their phones, because Todd said he has, mobile access from his phone, so it'd just be a matter of giving Rick the same access, and they'd do the same thing for the school.
So. Okay, any questions on that? Do we need to approve it tonight, because we're talking about, we put that on the next, be this
It's
summer?
just a discussion
Yeah,
item.
so next
it'll be-
time we'll have it on
Yep.
for approval, so we have questions, bring it up between now and next meeting. Old business, items for discussion and approval, preschool funding and transportation.
We need to know if the board wants to continue with what we are doing currently with preschool as far as the, different scholarships for all students. We got approval once again for the School Readiness Plus and the, that's under the voluntary pre-K funding. But the School Readiness Plus and School Readiness, and then the pathway, if you see at the bottom of this sheet, those are three funding sources. Unfortunately, those are three funding sources that fund all the same students. And then the other funding source is what we're using our collaborative dollars for. So we've got all of this funding, but we've got a shortfall of $8,200 because 48% of the kids don't qualify for 48% of the kids don't qualify for what?
42. Up at the top, 42% are paid.
Okay,
The others are, fall under one of the other revenue
Right.
streams.
So basically for about, what did we say, maybe 41 kids, I think Rick has said, something like that, it's about $200 a child for us to provide free preschool. Now, hopefully, like Michael and you brought it up, all those kids go to Houston, correct?
Well, that was the question. I mean, they're familiar with the school, the parents are familiar with the, I just wondered, does that translate? Does our investment here translate to student enrollment, student retention, student success in
Achievement,
the
yeah.
elementary school? Which I think it seems to me logical it would, but you need to look at it and see that that is happening.
and we don't have any of that data yet because none of these kids have gone into.
But we will have.
Yep,
We
we
will.
will.
And
So what we're doing tonight basically is if we're gonna, if I'm not saying this correctly, are we gonna approve this and continue it, correct?
Are we going to continue to fund with different, because we have to determine the cost of preschool and publicize the cost of preschool and then say that there's scholarship dollars to cover it. So,
Now, the only question, if I'm not mistaken, that came up in the past was transportation. And have they looked at if there's a better way of saving money there? The cost, because I know there was.
with transportation, in looking at that, right now, we are just transporting to daycares. And the only individual kids that are getting dropped off are the special ed students. if there's someone that's, on the way to a daycare and not a special ed student, they will drop them off, but they don't go they don't add to the route to drop off a student that's, not already on special ed. When transportation started, we only transported the kids that were special education, and the funding, for special education students, it's 100% covered. So right now, we just added because the board decided to add the daycares to that.
I'm just making sure, because I know the question came up by the transportation guy that we were doing, like I was down at the last meeting, going around, coming back, doing alternate routes than what we originally talked about. And I just wanna make sure that if we're gonna do that, is that gonna be covered under the budget? Is there gonna be a different cost?
Less amount covered by special ed revenue, the 3,000 is,
And that's what it was for doing all the alternative stuff that we did this year.
except what I'm saying is, the only people we dropped off,
I just
We're
asking
at-
a question because it came up that we went by a facility and then came back around and picked up kids and then
At-
came back into school. Where we're at say we're at a facility,
They get paid the same amount.
they get
They
paid,
get
that,
paid for a run.
it's,
If they
The-
add more to their run, they don't get paid more.
okay, I was just making sure. That's what my question was, because I didn't know how that was set up. So, okay.
but as far as there was somebody that brought up the thing about the time and going out of their way, and there should only be, they should only be dropped at one place, but
Well,
in
we're
checking
dropping kids
that,
off at one location and there's kids to pick up for the afternoon class. That should all happen at the same time.
right,
Right. It shouldn't be, we drop them off and then come back an hour later to pick up anybody else for the next course. Correct? That's how it should be.
right.
But what you're telling me, if it's not that way, then we're not paying any more to have them come back and pick them up.
And in talking, the one place where that was happening, considering those that were being dropped off or picked up, the bus driver felt it was probably more prudent to not have them on the bus the extra time.
Is there any more talk at the state level to, I followed it, I used to follow it, but is there any more thought on the horizon that the state might kick in more to preschool funding, and Dayton's he's been wanting that.
Right, there is talk about that, and what, when the superintendents were up at the, talking to the legislators, I said, you've earmarked all this money. It's all for the same kids. So you've got this huge pool of money for this little pond. And you think that you've given all of this money to cover all of these kids, when it only covers this itsy bitsy little pond, not the whole pool. And so there is some legislative push right now to open up some of the funding that they had, so it covers more than the very small kind of alley that it covers right now. So there's the possibility, but that would come into the next biennium.
Okay. And when you have here that the balance would have to come from either the community education or general fund, which one, how do we decide what that, I mean, who makes that decision?
And that's, so what I'm asking as far as a decision is, are you going to allocate money from the general fund for this, to cover this shortfall for community ed? That's one thing that you need to decide. The other thing is this something that you want to continue next year? Because as we're registering for preschool now for the next fall, we need to let parents know that the same kind of scholarship situation exists next year.
So what are you gonna say the cost, you're gonna say there's a cost and scholarships are available? Is that how it's gonna, cause I know last year was very confusing. I come to these meetings, so I knew what was going on, but, it was confusing for new parents.
The cost is listed, but there are scholarships to cover everyone's costs.
So it's gonna say that?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what it said last time too. The pink slip that went out to everybody said almost verbatim that this is the cost, but there's a scholarship to cover the cost. Please complete this form so we know what scholarship
You would qualify.
applies to you.
I know there were a lot of people that were really confused. I don't know if the note went out later or if it wasn't. We just need to be very, very clear. And as a parent of one of the kids in preschool and he'll be in preschool next year, I mean, our preschool program's amazing. I can't think of anything better to spend money on, honestly, than, I mean, it's such a great program. I think the kids are learning a lot. It feels to me, I was trying to think of if I felt any change. I feel like it feels more like school now. I felt like in the past when I was paying for it, it almost felt like another like daycare, you know, because I have to write a big check out for daycare, whether I send them to preschool or not. It feels more, you know, he said, do I go to school or do I go to daycare? And the fact that the buses drop off at the daycare, I mean, it's a big deal because if you have to stop doing what you're doing in the middle of the day, I mean, how many of you guys could stop your job and go pick up your kid at Ron? But actually, did you just volunteer? You know, just having that, I think that eliminated a lot of the issues. I think the first issue, there were two big issues. One was just getting the kids there and getting them home, and if somebody was working, how do they do that? And the second issue was the cost, and I think the cost is a big deal because the daycares are set up so that you pay daycare whether you're paying the same price at daycare. It's not like you're getting a discount. Plus you have this extra expense for preschool. So it in, you know, young families like that, I mean, it's not very many people probably have college and daycare both like I do, but it's expensive. So
Yeah, I did it.
yeah.
And the colleges do have
So-
daycare.
Yeah,
We
well, I
have-
played both.
Well,
at the
my
same
last,
time.
I just have one more question, Tom, and that is, so with a deficit on here that we're gonna have to cover, it seems to me out of the general fund, because the community education fund, community service, or,
Community education.
yeah, they don't
They
have
don't
the
have any
funds. And so, it has to come out of general fund, and so what's that gonna do to our fund balance, and what is that going to, what gets put at risk if we make this commitment? And are we gonna be in danger of having to take from somewhere else to cover it?
I think when we talked about the assumptions for our budget for next year, we could just list it as an assumption and put down a cost of $10,000 and put it in the budget, right? I mean, just like we put in,
Yeah, if
you
that's
know,
what the board decides.
I mean, just like we put in computers for 30,000.
I understand that's how we could do it, I'm
just
still saying, where's Peter and Paul here?
If you keep,
If we
I
keep the
mean, if you
program,
keep
right
paying,
now, we
yeah,
have
if you
12
keep
million
paying for
grand.
something, yes, something else has to give. You're absolutely right.
Well, we can get more kids too,
Sure.
and maybe all these
The
kids will
objective
grow
is
and-
to increase our enrollment by
Well, it would affect our
offering this.
kindergarten, and we wouldn't see it until kindergarten, but yeah, our kindergarten enrollment would be up next year compared to what it would have been, but
We don't
we
know.
wouldn't
We
know
just
that.
don't know that yet.
Right, so right now, we're taking a gamble. Do we spend $8,200? In theory, we
Yes.
bring in more kids in the community. Either way, these kids get something out of it, they benefit, and that's what we're here for, is to benefit the children, so. Are we gonna lose money somewhere? Yeah, but to give
Well,
and
we have to
take.
benefit all our kids. All I'm
Right.
saying, I'm not trying to say
Oh,
which
no, no.
way I'm leading, I'm just leaning, I just wanna talk about the whole thing.
No, I'll make sure we understand, it's the cost, we have to be honest with the people about that.
And do we have a certain threshold here where we have to hire another teacher? I mean, are we at that, I mean, are we at
Oh,
a
yeah, that would
level
change
where
things.
the expenses could be a lot more
Right
because
now,
enrollment goes up?
Not for the preschool teacher that's listed there, the preschool school readiness teacher, we're not to those numbers. Special ed, we are getting close to having to hire another special ed teacher for the program. But that's a different funding source, that's not community ed, that's early childhood special education. and that's a different funding source.
So the other people we see helping out are under a different,
Yep.
they're not on here.
No.
Got it. Cause
Yep.
there's more than one person in the buildings.
Yes.
There's
Right.
many people helping out all those kids when they're there.
Yes.
So, do we have a motion to continue the preschool funding and transportation program? Okay, $200. Have a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
second. Further discussion?
I'm just wondering, is the motion to should we, in addition to approve it, should we also put a assumption in for a cost
Oh, yeah.
of 10,000 into the next year's budget or something like, I mean, it's 8266, but just put in 10 to be safe and.
So, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? New business, items for discussion and approval. First reading on policy 901 and 905. Michaeline or Ron, do you have any comments at this time?
No.
Thank you, Ron. Michaeline?
No.
Okay.
There really aren't many changes.
Are there any?
No changes that I saw, and I did make sure that Rick was aware that he should review it as well.
Okay.
See the community head contact
Yes.
person?
Right.
Yes.
Announcements, supporting events, Teachers Appreciation Week is coming
Next
up.
week is Teacher Appreciation Week.
So, make sure you appreciate your teachers,
Are
which we
doing-
always do.
Do we
Yeah.
do anything like an ad, or do we do anything?
Did you want to do an ad? Did you want to do something as a board for all of our teachers? Cause,
I would like to.
okay,
I don't think
I would,
anybody-
I mean, I know you do, but I think the board, I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to
We put some
acknowledge
in the
our.
paper. I don't know what that would be, but we could help donate them, assuming can you find out, Ann?
Maybe we could use that spot the dental clinic has.
They probably will do it anyway, they are responsible that way.
Yeah. We can talk after the meeting, Ann, and
Okay,
go from there.
yeah, they have press releases and things that can be.
Okay.
Does the Legion give them apples or something?
yes, the
Okay.
Legion gives the on-site teachers apples. They,
cool.
I
We
don't
can
think they
send
send
virtual
ones.
apples.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware.
Virtual apples, yeah.
Virtual apples?
They're very low calorie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we wanna show our appreciation, because they do well. Good
Yeah.
job.
All of
We're
our
lucky to
teachers.
have what we have in Forest. Okay, anything else on that, Corinne? Meetings and committee updates. We had a facility meeting. Gary, you wanna?
Yes, we talked about a number of things, starting with additional cameras for the high school and the elementary school, and we've already talked about the elementary school. And so we're adding some additional ones at the high school also, just to provide better coverage. This would include 4 new high-definition IP cameras to watch the perimeter and 1 new high-definition IP camera for the gym. Any questions on those?
So did you want the cameras, the high school cameras on the budget, or on the agenda for the next meeting for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
And does, yeah. Okay, anything else on the cameras? Next thing we discussed is the garage.
Okay. Gary asked that I create these. What this is the map. And the little yellow Post-it is the actual size of the garage.
Not the actual size.
Not the
Well,
actual
no,
size.
not
We
the
wouldn't get
actual.
much in there.
The scale
Scale
size.
size, there. Okay, and it is on a Post-it note, so you can move it and stick it down anywhere you
Nice.
want
Oh,
to.
what fun.
The reason this came up is because we've discussed this location numerous times.
Yes.
We talked about putting it on the gravel, we talked about putting it off to the side. So when we had our meeting of the facilities, Gary came up with this thought is, let's try to all be on the same page and let's see what it would look like and where we want to put it.
Okay, and this, I was not at the facilities meeting, but in talking to some of the people that were there was some misunderstanding about what this map really is and what can be moved and what has to be done. There's the Army Corps of Engineer, the yellow line is where they've got the ponding line drawn. You can't build within a ponding line. So that yellow line, you can only build where the lines, the red lines come out. Now, we can contract with the Army Corps of Engineers to move the yellow line. They would then redraw the yellow line, but what we'd have to do for every square foot that they moved the yellow line, as far as putting it where we could build, we would have to dig out comparable space in something that is on the north side of that yellow line, as far as you can take and build on this land, but now we need this land for flood mitigation. That's what this line is. This is the flood mitigation line and that's why they've got the cement pillars that say pond. The pond markers are flood mitigation. So if we end up with a flood, they need to have enough area with enough volume to cover what they feel would be the water that might be generated in a flood, to keep it away from going onto the streets and the homes. So that's the yellow line. There was another one that was shown as far as the actual elevation and what is flood zone. What is in here, even if we build it where for those of you wondering where the facility committee was thinking of building it, if you take your sticker, the actual yellow one that's there is not quite in the right place. This is where the committee was talking about building it. So it's right to that back corner, and the setback is right at about 30 feet, so we don't really need a variance. It would have north-facing doors. You would drive in, and this would all be cement to drive up into the garage. It would be sloped down, because if you looked at the elevation map, and that's in the facilities, the elevation map was done, it says ponding by Mead Hunt, which is confusing because that's the actual elevation map. We would have to fill in about 2 feet here to get us up to the level where it's above flood stage. So above the floodplain. So there's 2 different maps at work, and the committee, I don't think, got into that, so you could know that. That's one of the locations. The other thing that was talked about, there's a gray line drawn parallel to your red line right in the parking lot. If you had it so it went up to that gray line like this, then cars would still have, you would not take the parking lot, because cars would still have room to park where they're parking now, and then the garage would be facing.
But you couldn't get into the garage with cars there. You'd have to move cars to get in.
If you had the doors open
Right,
to
that's what I
the
mean.
east, if you had the doors open to the east and put the parking, the doors opening this way.
But you couldn't put them that way, could you, because of the ponding area? And it would have
If
to
we
be 2
raised
feet
it,
up.
if we raised it up, because we'd have to fill in here anyway to put it here, we would have to
Right.
about the same amount of fill. But this would require us to hire someone from the Army Corps of Engineers to redraw the yellow line.
And then we'd have to give up, dig holes over it
We
somewhere
would
on
have
that
to,
end.
we would have to excavate equal area here, but this one, it's not just this little corner to move. You have to understand that
Right.
you have to put out
Mm-hmm.
the area for the
In front
entire
of it.
driveway in
Well,
front
if
of
you had
it.
them come in from that way.
What?
If you had them come in from that way.
We really can't afford to give up the
I
parking
know, I
space
know, I
that.
know.
And the reason I've got this line here is that that's a 30-foot setback. If we go inside that 30-foot setback, we would have to have a variance from the city. We could do that, we could ask for a variance, but I know that, with the building the way it is, I haven't seen anything closer than 15 feet given for a variance.
What's the issue with the first plan?
With the garage out here,
I thought it looked good there, I'm just wondering why that won't work. Or
Well, the
what's
question came
negative?
up at the last meeting.
If there's a better
Is there-
option,
is
or?
there- If there's a better option to it.
Cause this one seems nice, cause then all the garage doors would be right towards the street. And,
the garage doors are north facing, and so we looked at a different slope of roof, and that slope of roof wasn't.
And the reason we
Being
looked at that,
attractive.
I wanna remind people, we looked at that because of snow. We don't have to do it that way, we could make it look like a regular garage, but we talked about if we had it sloping that way, if we had weather, like snow, we wouldn't have it come straight down in front of the garage and have ice build up where we'd have to have somebody take care of it. If we had it sloping back, it would go behind it and we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Right.
Doesn't mean we have to go with that design. That was just a discussion that we had at the board meeting, because those questions came up.
Right,
And we don't feel that that would be aesthetic to do that, or what?
Which? The slope?
The modified.
The change, the modified one where the front would be.
Up. Oh, no, that just came up, I guess, in discussion. Somebody
Right.
said that they didn't
Well, we
necessarily
looked
like to
at
look
that,
at
but
that.
remember the pictures they sent us were of that big shed with the brown
Right.
bales in it. It was not to scale for this size
It
of
was,
shed.
yeah, it
and
wouldn't
was-
necessarily, it would
Plus,
look,
you know, if you're looking at the darn thing from the north side, which you'd be doing, you know, I don't think it would look bad at all, but
Well, I thought we talked about, you and I talked about it after the meeting, saying, would it feel more like it was part of the district if we turned it 90 degrees? We're the ones that did it.
right.
Because then it's more part of the district, and there was a discussion of how do the neighbors feel about looking at a shed like that? How does that look? Does it look better for them looking at the side or looking at all the garage doors? I don't know, those were the conversations we
it's
had.
right across from garages though, I mean, what do
oh,
they
this is
want?
that picture, but it's not necessarily.
Not gonna
wouldn't
look like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
That's
So
Or-
that's what we were trying to make a
Oh.
determination on.
And that's, I mean, you know,
It would look more
Gary
like
would look.
Dix's.
Yeah,
I
you
thought it
go-
was gonna be like a mini storage thing with each stall
Yeah, that's
separate.
right,
and
that's what we
doors.
were saying
No,
is,
you wouldn't have the
Right.
hay bales.
right,
Nope, no.
no.
How much does it cost to contract with the Army Corps of Engineers? Do you have any idea?
I don't know, I found that out coming back on Tuesday, so that's at
The other thought I had on it was that if you have to dig out something else, can't you use that for the fill, since you said you have to raise the.
mm-hmm.
So if you got over in here and just recontoured this area here and put the fill where the garage is gonna go, it seems to me you'd be killing two birds with one stone.
If we'd have, what I would wanna know is what would be the cost, like Michael said, what would it cost to have the, Corps of Engineer, cause they would have to be the ones to do that, and then
Well, the
they
one
would.
way you don't have to contract with them.
No, but I mean, if we move it to the other way, that we were talking this way.
Yeah.
So it's facing the school, and then we fill in the backside and
And
all that.
actually, we could move it. It doesn't have to go, we could move it so it's partially on this, so it's right up to that line. So we could move it so it's more like that too.
Right, and then you wouldn't have to,
Then we wouldn't have to have as much fill at all.
But then you're giving up more of your parking space.
right,
Well, but the parking,
It's still there.
the parking is still, that's why your gray line is drawn. That's all that's really needed for parking, because,
just like here.
People park up to that.
Right.
So you could in essence put the side of the.
Yeah, you could put it right up to the gray.
Right up to the gray
right.
line.
It could be
right,
just,
the
it could
side
be
of the
just like
shed could
that.
go right up to the gray line.
People don't park over
Right.
that gray line
No,
past
there's
that.
usually only one
As
car.
Todd said, it's usually full out there.
Well,
But that's-
it is, but that's, if you saw the picture with the cars are right here. And so sometimes they drive out this way, so this would prevent them from driving straight out. They would have to back out and drive straight out this way, the way these cars do.
Basically, you would be forcing them to parallel
What
park
about
properly.
taking out these trees and just moving the parking lot over this way?
Taking out what
and-
trees?
Huh?
Taking out
Well,
what trees?
cutting into
Oh.
some of this and just making that parking lot and moving, then there'd be more room for the cars on that side. I don't know what we use it would,
Well, I thought part of the objective was to use area that's just not being used. I mean, even if we have to
Right.
haul fill in, so what?
I do like the idea of moving it over a little bit if we're looking at, like right there, Gary. You know, here's where the cars parked, having it right there, cause then you're looking at probably minimum fill for this corner. But again, we don't know.
That, this line across this way, is that the setback from the road?
Yes.
So how many feet is it from the center of the street to the curb? Is that 10 or 15?
The line that's drawn in there is 30 feet from the curb, because it's 30 feet from the curb for setback. So it doesn't really matter what the center line is.
Oh, okay.
So if you see the 30-foot setback with that kind of purplish arrow,
Mhm.
that's what it's marking, that 30-foot setback from the curb.
Okay, okay.
Setback doesn't go from the center of the road, setback goes from the curb.
Well, if you were gonna maintain the setback, well, you sure wouldn't have to change that yellow line much.
Not if we went that way that we originally talked, the way you're looking at it right now. You wouldn't have to do it at all.
Right, if you,
Realistically, right here,
if you
Ron.
put it,
You put it just
so it's
right up
parallel to
there,
Elm Street, you don't need to
You would
move
have
the
to
yellow
do it.
line at all.
you wouldn't have to do anything, you'd only have to fill in maybe this area right here.
We would, it would just require some fill, we don't need to contract with the Army Corps of Engineers at all. Which is why the facility committee talked about putting it parallel to Elm Street to begin with. Because that way was really the path of least resistance.
Questions?
Well, it seems like
So the
that's-
cars are all parking facing.
Right. Basically, we'd have to make them parallel park like they do here or there.
Well, they do that,
They
they
do
do
it
that
now,
already.
but-
The cars there pull in and face east.
Right.
And it's just the cars on the other side pull in and face west.
So if we put it right where that is, we would have minimum.
They just won't be able to.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I
Alright,
guess I'd like to see us go with that, roof line that doesn't dump all the snow on the,
So you like the monoslope roof.
yeah. Just because, the, snow is shed next to the dental office. It's a pile of snow dumped right on in front of the,
mhm. Yeah.
and, so that's extra work. And this is facing north, so that means it's not gonna go away very fast. And if it's sloppy and slushy, it's gonna freeze there.
Well, you
And I
would,
don't think that monoslope roof would look bad at all, just when you're looking from the north side. Because that's where everybody's looking from. And if we don't have the hay bales in it, all the better.
Well, just like
It's
this.
not gonna be
Just
as
imagine
high
this
as
is,
that.
you know, those kind of doors.
The neighbors do have a mono roof over here too. Mark regards on his, on his neck, on his,
see you
rental,
later, Ange. Well, thanks for coming.
On this house?
on the rental.
Oh.
On the addition on rental.
Yeah, a
This
little
way.
bit, yep.
So. Is everybody happy with that location? so we can continue the quest and getting costs and bids.
I appreciate you spending all the extra time to look at the various what-ifs. I appreciate that.
No, we just wanna make sure everybody's happy with it and we can kinda go from there, so. We'll start getting quotes for fill and stuff like that,
I've gotten those.
yeah, so.
And Corey Larson hasn't gotten back to me about the direction of the metal.
No, that's right.
That was the other
Oh,
question.
yeah,
Yeah,
forgot that.
Doesn't have to look more like a house and not a pole shed,
Mhm.
which you shouldn't, I wouldn't think, big deal, but.
No,
it'll
Okay.
add to the cost.
So what else we got, Gary?
Could always do
Okay, the
the
next thing we
back.
talked about was just an FYI on the housing for Blue Stars Drum and Bugle Corps. Any comments on that?
Billy Hoppel will be coming here next week just to tour the building. We've posted the Blue Stars here before, and it's not actually the Blue Stars. It's, the Blue Stars are having their Drum and Bugle Corps, expo. And, that will be, I think, July 1st. And so, or July 2nd, so they'll be coming just to spend a night, practice, and then go to the competition in lacrosse. And, we couldn't host them for 2 years because of, the locker room being ripped up. And then the whole, building was, the gym wasn't available because they were redoing the gym. But now that the building is back to being totally usable, they will have one of the Drum and Bugle Corps here, and then they actually practice out on the football field.
Is it
And
just one day they did that? I
Yeah.
thought there
Yep.
were a couple days.
no, it's just one, it's really a fast trip. They're just here for one day. They practice out on our football field one day, and then the next day, they they go to lacrosse and perform there.
But they
And-
basically, they put on a show that night here.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, that's
So
the best
they
part.
start at
Be
11,
there.
10 in the morning and practice right on through,
yeah.
because I hear the ding.
No, it's just, it's a really good opportunity for the community, and
Oh, yeah, for sure.
the person setting it up is actually from William Hopple is, and he still has relatives around here.
Okay, the next thing we talked about was steps at the preschool and elementary gym. And they're in the process of getting bids from Chris Nelson, who is working with Travis Bruno on the concrete part of that. So there, we're just basically waiting for bids.
I think he's going there Monday, I talked to him today,
Okay.
Travis, we're meeting him Monday afternoon, we're gonna go there, I talked to Rick today.
Any possibility of handicap access there or no?
We're looking at all of that. At least that's what I talked to them about before. I don't know if anything's changed.
I think he's gonna look at the location and see what we have to do for school.
Preschool can't have, we're looking at that for the elementary gym, we're looking at the possibility of having a ramp. The preschool steps, there's just no way that
Too much.
there's too much of an
You can start at
incline,
the
there's
high
no
school
way to
right
do a handicap accessible step there.
He switched back.
And there's no law requiring it?
We
Yeah.
already have the handicapped
have a-
accessible entrance, so we
Right.
don't need,
We have the
at
elevator.
the,
Okay.
yes, at the
We're good to
preschool,
go.
we don't need to do another one.
Okay. Next thing we talked about was replacing the folding doors in the high school gym. And it would be a lot more economical to go with manual opening doors, so that's the route that Todd is looking at.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I talked to Todd after that, and I said, as we were talking about it, I said, we have to ensure that the doors that we're looking at are heavy duty as far as withstanding basketballs, withstanding baseballs,
We already
getting,
talked about
yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah, his original bid was around 25,000 or 27,000, and he said to get a heavier door would cost a little bit more, so that's why we have 30 on here. just to make sure it's covers all that.
Right.
We talked about a baseball hitting it.
Yep.
Gary said somebody's head. That's what you said. I don't know, I'm just
I
repeating.
didn't say that. Okay, any questions on the doors? Okay, next thing we talked about was asbestos tile removal at the high school. And we were talking about the whole building, including the science rooms, as needing abatement. Is that right?
There are some rooms that have been done, so it's, the rooms that we redid for the, special education and, developmentally disabled room, those have already been done.
Okay, so
So,
over there.
yeah,
How about the old part of the school?
the old part of the school, these classrooms would have to be done. The choir room and the band room and the, rooms off of those, the little rooms off of there need to be done, but that's all figured in to the square footage and the price.
Okay. The other thing we talked about was once that is done, the old tile is removed, then what? And one possibility that Todd talked about was polishing and staining the concrete.
Except we have to figure out, we don't know what the subflooring is.
Right.
They were just discussion. Once they look at it, if it's like the lunchroom area, maybe there's other options as opposed to just for durability and longevity.
And as a reminder, that project was put in long-term facility maintenance for fiscal 19, or, yes, fiscal 18, actually, but it could move to fiscal 19 easily. And with that, it was for not only the abatement, but actually the replacement, and the cost for the replacement. We went really high because we didn't know at that point as far as putting that in the budget. So the amount that was put in there was for the no wax. So it's the maintenance-free tile that just is soap and water wash, where they would never have to do another seal, they'd never have to do any type of waxing or finishing on that.
Okay. And like you said, once the old is ripped up, then.
But we have to decide what is going to go on it before we rip up.
Yeah.
This would be a project for a year from now, right? Or are you talking about this for
At
this summer?
this point, yeah, to get a crew in here to do abatement, we can't schedule it anymore now.
No, so we're planning this out for
Right.
next summer,
Right.
at the earliest.
At the earliest.
Okay.
But we need to take care of the asbestos tiles.
Well, I mean, if you can do it, I just was wondering if it was for,
I think there was discussion
Immediate
about
or-
somebody that could do it, Gary, was
What's
that? Didn't they talk about somebody that was certified to do?
Well, he
Oh, that's
mentioned that
right.
Mabel could possibly do both,
Right.
but we don't know what's underneath.
how do you find that out?
Gotta
You get
Rip
somebody
it out.
in to,
You,
take it out,
yeah,
take a
See
few
what
out
you
and
got.
see.
So, given that, is it safer to just say, let's go with the tile, have that ready to go and just go that route? Not worry about polish and stain?
That's something we should talk to UNESCO about and have them kind of let us know
Oh,
which would
yeah,
be the
that's a good
direction to
idea.
go.
and
Maybe-
they'd say you have to figure out what's on the subflooring.
Right. You gotta grip it out first.
Yeah.
We
Because
can't
it-
see it, they can't see it.
well,
Right.
can you do that part of it at all this
We
summer,
c-
so
we
you
c-
can know?
Yeah, we
what we're
can
gonna-
you can take out, like, there are some places where we've put in the non-asbestos tiles because they've been water damaged and so tiles have been thrown out. So we could take up some of those non-asbestos
And
tiles
see what's underneath.
and see what's underneath and
And because it's in this part of the school, not the part where the special ed room was redone, it's different here.
right.
So we can't,
We'd have to look at the subflooring in the 1957 section, and then we'd have to look at the subflooring
So there's,
in the 68 section.
so there's two places you have to look.
Two places we'd have to look, and that would have that would put the bearing on what we decide to put in the place when the child is gone.
But it sounds like if Mabel could do the whole thing, if that's where we go, there's something that they can do both of. They are,
Well, they could either do the tile or
but the
the
tile,
stain.
coming off the tile being it's not asbestos, we don't have to have anybody special to do that, correct?
No, but you were talking about just pulling up a few to see what's underneath.
Right, that's what I'm
We're
saying.
pulling
That
up a
wouldn't
few of the
require-
non-asbestos
Right, that wouldn't
tiles.
require anybody special, so
No.
we could have anybody do
So
that.
that could be
Right.
done so that you can then make
Right.
a
step.
recommendation about whether to do tile or whether to do the polish.
Right.
Would that be enough of an area to be indicative of the whole area?
I'm not sure if we've got areas that in the science rooms or if any tiles have come up, because we would just have to be able to take up the non-asbestos tiles where they have been replaced, and I don't know if we've got areas such as that in the choir room or band room or in the science rooms. That would be something that I'd have to check.
Okay.
I know we've got areas in the 1957 section that have been replaced.
Right.
So,
Okay,
more discussion.
right. Yeah, we're just getting started on that one. Next thing we talked about was antifreeze for the high school HVAC system. And we talked there about getting some input from UNESCO on,
We got the input from UNESCO. They told us that we needed to get the testing done, and if the testing indicated that we needed to replace it, then we should replace it. If the testing indicated it was fine, we should not.
Oh, should have been there, we didn't get that information.
Yeah, I was not able to be there, and
No, I know, but I would have thought,
I think
We
you
were
sent
in
that out in a
turbulence.
note, didn't you? Because if it had water in it, then it would.
that was,
well, they did a test on it. They did, Winona Controls did, and they came back with some, what was this, $25,250 to replace the antifreeze in the system and flush out the old, because there's contaminants in there.
Who does
That
the
when
testing?
we tied the two systems together, there was
Um,
contamination that came from the old system
That's
into the
the-
new system.
testing got sent to,
So now that we've
to
added,
Andy, and Andy forwarded it to me, and I forwarded it while I was in an airport, so I got to see it on Tuesday. I think Thompson Laboratories.
So there is a
testing.
lab that does the
Yeah.
testing, and it is being tested?
how
It has been
It has
tested,
been
Done.
tested, and you
Yes.
do you have the results, yeah.
yes.
and it needs to be replaced.
No,
No?
Oh,
no, the test results, those
what you're
got
saying.
forwarded, I
Which one you talking
forwarded to Todd, they're 22%, and the, lab said that was within the realm of, safe percentage.
So that
Oh.
this is a non-issue for another year or till whenever
Oh,
we
really?
have to test
It's
it.
Winona Controls wanted it to be at 30% and they said that the,
So Todd
For the
was there,
mid-
he didn't say any of that to us. What you're telling us right now is information that, when we were there, we had this form that said it had to be at 30%, and it's gonna cost us $25,000 to make it happen.
and then the lab results are there as well.
Where? That's this one here, from Winona
It says
Control?
lab report on the backside.
Excellent, there you go.
Oh,
Oh. Yeah, but this says 22%.
This test shows the glycol solution is in normal condition and satisfactory for continued use. That's
Right.
the laboratory report.
So then why didn't they bring that up when we were sitting there?
Well, because Winona Controls wants it higher.
Yeah, I know,
Winona
but
Controls wanted it
what I'm- my
at 30%,
question, though,
it's right at,
is-
now it's at 22. I don't know why people didn't bring it up at the meeting, I wasn't there.
Okay, then let's continue on.
okay. Next thing is lead testing of the water, and we've already talked about that. Any more questions on that?
No. Will the Health and Safety Committee report to facilities or report to the board? I guess that would be my question. Maybe check with Todd, and when they get together, who does that? I mean, I'd be fine if that goes to facilities and then comes to us, just needs to,
So someone needs to talk about it.
it needs to either go to you guys or it needs to come to the full board? What do you prefer?
I mean, the results of the testing.
No, health and their decisions on whether they're
Oh,
gonna do, you know, all three of those things of the IEA or
I can say
whether-
they could bring it to the facility meeting and then we can discuss
That's
cost and all that other stuff and then bring it to the board saying that they brought it to our attention and this is what we
Oh,
figured out.
because you talked about it there and we
Right.
talked about it
And then we bring it
extensively
up.
here.
That would be my thoughts. That's okay with everybody.
Okay, then under miscellaneous, we talked about some more elementary school painting. And Rick thought that Brock did a really good job on the top level, so he's gonna do the next level down.
Last year, when he was hired, it was a 2-year contract, so that's already done.
Oh, okay.
Who was that?
Brock Johnson?
Brock Johnson from Rushford,
Okay.
it was upstairs,
Was he the one that
First
had
year.
to do the?
upstairs first year because he didn't have, by the time we hired him, he didn't have enough time to do
Both.
both floors. And so he could get one floor done 1 year and then one floor done the next year. So that was already approved last
And
year.
you're satisfied with his work?
Yeah.
Rick was satisfied with his work?
Okay, next thing is replacing the galvanized piping with copper in the high school. Andy, how did that go, Tom? Andy said they had
And then
a bid with somebody.
$37,250.
When I requested the bid from Winona Controls, I requested to know exactly how many feet of galvanized was
Right.
there so that we could budget like
Like we talked about and we
in
wrote on
sections
here.
of it.
We talked about it and we wrote on my notes, we're gonna revisit it because there was more information we wanted,
The
so.
thing that you need to know about this when I started, because once again, this came the afternoon and I was still gone. So some of the issue with the glycol solution in the HVAC system here at the high school is because it is tapping into the old system. When the new HVAC system was installed, there were some old pipes that were used. There was old piping used, especially in the east wall of the building. So that's all still old piping. And so when they tap the new HVAC system into the old pipes, some of those pipes are the older galvanized, and that's what's causing the breakdown of the glycol solution. So right now, if we pay to put in the new glycol solution up to the 30% that the manufacturer recommends, we still have the issue where we have the old galvanized pipes in the heating, and so the glycol that we would add would break down again. So instead of adding the new glycol right now, do we want to really look at what it would take and the cost of redoing the heating pipes with new copper instead of the galvanized, so that the HVAC system, when we do put in the new glycol, because we will eventually have to put in the new glycol in that system, that it doesn't break down, because right now if we put the new glycol in, it will once again break down in 10 years.
Right. Yeah, that's what we had on discussion and we discussed, that's why we wrote revisit, because there was too many. They didn't, when Andy got this piping cost, it wasn't to replace all the galvanized in the building.
All.
It was only a certain amount, so
This
he's
is
gonna.
just the water
Well,
galvanized
I mean,
under the
that's why
floor.
Right.
that's why we tabled it, and it was just discussion, and when Andy gets back to us with the rest of the information, then we'll bring it back to the board.
Were you
'Cause he was talking
specific
about
about
vertical.
how you wanted the information as far as
We,
the
yeah, I
feet need to
thought,
be included?
yeah, that's exactly how we said to him. I said, we need the feet, and we had Todd there, and we said we need to make sure, because there was some questions on the science room and the plumbing down there. I said, we need to see, because Andy said, well, we didn't do behind the wall and this. I said, no, we need to know what it's gonna cost to replace all the galvanized pipe in the building that's left, how many feet there are, and how much it is per foot or per section to replace it. How are they gonna charge us? And then go from there. So, then we said the same thing about the antifreeze, glycol, or whatever that is, Cause evidently we've already done it twice, from what he told us. We've done it 2 times, we've added $5,000 worth of this stuff over the last few years, because it's broken down. And we could do that again, but we said, why do it again? If the pipes are creating the problem, why not wait till we replace the pipes and then redo the system? Cause then it's supposedly good for 10 years, correct?
Actually, from what UNESCO said, a sealed system, like at the elementary school, we will never have to replace or
Well, that's
recycle.
what, I asked Andy that, I said, doesn't make any sense to me, because a sealed system, how can it get contaminated? Or how can it break down? It's like a sealed system. And he said, according to Winona Control, it has to be replaced every 10 years, right? Isn't that kind of like
Well,
his
you can
verbiage?
test it. I mean, sealed systems can
I'm
have
just
defects.
repeating.
Right, no,
I mean,
any
a
sealed
sealed-
system can have a defect,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
UNESCO said we never
If
should
it
have to.
if it stays sealed,
Right,
That's
So-
if
But
we
we
get
are
rid
in
of all the
Minnesota
galvanized
freezing and-
piping, right?
Okay, so
Thawing
we're
and freezing
talking
time.
2 different things here. We're talking the water system coming
And the
into the
heating
building.
and the heating
And
system.
and then there's galvanized pipes in the heating
Correct.
system.
and in the water system.
And in the water
Yeah,
system.
both, so it's
Because
2
when, yeah,
projects going on.
Right.
right,
Correct. That's why we need to get the total cost.
but it's the same firm that would replace the galvanized pipes, so do we want Winona Controls to which project should they tackle first? The galvanized pipes in the walls with the heating system, or the galvanized pipes with the water? And I think we probably need to get water tests back first to see if there's an issue there, to see if we have to really tackle the water pipes first.
Is this all paid for by deferred maintenance?
Yes, but there's
We have money here.
there is money, but it's not an abyss. There's a
Right.
finite set each
Oh, I
year.
know. No,
Of
but
deferred maintenance?
but we also have money available
Of
yet.
long-term facility maintenance, sorry.
Yeah, long-term facility maintenance.
But
It's
my
not-
understanding, we still have some funds
We
available.
never
Yeah.
take everything we
No.
can, right? I mean,
Well, that's what I mean, but it's still, Corinne's just saying if, we can't do $1 million project like that. We don't have
Without
This isn't $1
impacting,
million.
yeah, without
We don't
impacting,
have that.
we don't wanna,
But these are 2
they,
different
we
things.
only,
we're
we only
talking
pay
about, right?
11% of the long-term facility maintenance. I guess if, because of the funding percentage, if it qualifies as long-term facility maintenance, it's just get it all done. I mean,
That's what you
and
need
we're
to
never
find
gonna have a
out.
better deal than 11% of the cost, right? I mean, I could be wrong, is it 11% of long-term?
Right, but adding that to the levy increases the levy. Even though we get 11% levy authority, if you add more to the levy, it's gonna make
It's
the
gonna
levy go
impact
up. It'll make the taxes go up.
But we do have some
Well,
funds
we don't,
available.
every year, we never, for the last few years, we have this large bucket available for long-term facility maintenance, and we don't take it. We take a small portion,
Oh, we
That's
spend what we
because if we
take.
took it, it would make the.
because we have to spend it. So if we have these projects, we can use it, we should take more,
Yeah, but if
because
we
we
take
only
more,
pay
it's gonna
11.
impact the tax statement.
We have to just kind
Tax
of, it's
rate.
gotta be a budget, a balance.
Well, we're never gonna get a better deal than 11% of the
Well, we
cost.
should look at it.
yeah.
Oh, that's, I mean, that's,
I mean,
we're looking at
It's
it.
pretty cheap.
We gotta get the cost, we gotta make sure, how it all comes into play. So once we get that information, the true numbers, then we'll come back.
Corinne wants the water test to,
And that will be part of it. Then we can kind of designate which way we want to go first.
Mhm.
Because, just because we're looking at 2 separate things, it may be cheaper for them to do both at the same time. 1, because of the funding available to us. 2, if they're gonna be in the same location, cutting this pipe and this pipe's right next to it, it may be
Well,
cheaper.
the
I
water
don't know.
thing is a safety thing,
Right.
Yep.
lead in the water. The heating one is a cost thing because it's degrading the glycol.
Correct.
So they both have to be done for different reasons,
Right.
so.
Right.
you need to look at the
We
whole
just
thing.
gotta.
And
look at
the
whole-
heating pipes are almost all in the walls, and the water pipes are almost all
In the floor.
underneath, in the
Oh,
floor.
okay, I never
Okay.
crawled around, so. But anyway, more to come on that.
They're salamanders.
So other miscellaneous?
they're cute.
Remember when we used to have those things around here? And it was
They're-
coming
they're
in.
called-
Was there anything else, Gary?
Oh, nice.
One more thing. Bleacher inspection, we can either hire somebody to do it for $1,200 or do it ourselves. So that's it, we're looking at just doing that ourselves.
And just so you know, as far as, we do have people on staff who are certified to do bleacher instruction. It's not this, or bleacher inspection, instruction.
how do we get up into the bleachers?
Slowly. Okay.
One last question. How long was this facilities meeting
It was
anyway?
a long meeting. It was over an hour, hour and a half.
Over in 27 minutes.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Yeah. But we had the time, so it was good to get it all at least working. So, thanks, Greg. So the other meeting we had, which was earlier today, was finance, and we kind of talked about some of it, but maybe you have some more information you want to add to that one, or?
We already went over the adjusted budget, we talked about the preschool, we talked about assumptions for the FY 19, is that the right year? So, and just started to get a list of assumptions. Those will come to the board, the assumptions, when do those come to the board as an agenda item to agree upon? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
In June.
Okay.
And then the question, you want to bring up that other part of it, on the monies? The question was brought up at the meeting, like we have on the assumptions for a bus, a van, a garage, all those type of cost and technology and curriculum. Anything, as Gwen reminded us, over $10,000 does come back to the board for discussion, but we want to also let you guys know that they were discussed in the finance committee prior to us, coming in here. It wasn't just we decided to buy a bus.
So yeah, you'll see those listed as assumptions, but when you approve it, you're not approving the purchase of a bus, but
Right.
for,
Approving the assumption that we made.
The amount which
Yeah.
is set aside on the assumption that
Right.
the board
Needs
will
one.
approve.
Right.
and I don't think there was anything too major listed as an assumption, you just listed them off, I mean,
That was it. Anything else you want to talk about on that?
I think you guys know all of them, so.
So, anything else, Corinne, for feedback?
District Tech Advisory Committee met, and the main thing there is to get the plan done, and that we're going to meet again
May 29th.
May 29th, okay? And at May 29th meeting, we'll go over the plan, that will come to the board at the first June meeting. And at that, May 29th meeting, we'll also talk, the tech budget will also be there to make sure that everybody understands. And if anybody has any questions, concerns, and then looking at, because the plan is addressing parts of those budget concerns as far as the goals. So we'll come back to that District Tech Advisory Committee on the 29th. The other thing I did just, April 16th, I sent the letter to Ascentech requesting the cable access channel. I got an email back late this afternoon saying, it's kind of funny that we need to request the cable access channel from the city. So as I was going back and forth, the beginning of April with Sherry Wilkemeyer at Ascentech, as far as, okay, to whom do I address this letter and what needs to be included, and so then I got all of that and then sent her the letter. She came back today and said, I'm sorry, management told me that this has to go to city council for their approval. And I said, okay. And I said, but we're requesting our own cable access channel. We don't want to piggyback with the city the way Rushford does. We want our own cable, our own school cable access channel, the way La Crescent, Hoka, and Caledonia Area Schools has. And she said, yeah, but she was told it had to go to the city. And I said, okay, fine. So I contacted Chris Peterson right away. And as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we are on the May 14th agenda for city council to see if they will add our school cable access channel to their franchise agreement. And it makes no sense to me because it should be a different
Should be a
franchise
separate entity.
agreement. And when we applied 10 years ago, we were told that we had to apply first and request it, and then they would do a franchise agreement with us. So I don't know what has changed, but now it's just a new hoop. And so I'm
Jumping.
jumping through them because eventually I want us to get our cable access channel.
Do Rushford and La Crescent have, does La Crescent, do they have the same thing? Did they have to go through their city? Do you know? You talked to Kevin?
In talking about it before, it was when the franchises were originally set up with the cable when it was Ace and they got their TV for the first place. They did all the franchise agreements at that time. I'm not sure why Houston Schools wasn't included in there. I'm not sure why Lanesboro Schools wasn't included. But the way the Rushford City and the Rushford Schools set up their franchise agreement, they were one entity. They share a channel. La Crescent was issued 2 channels right away. One was for the school, one was for the city. I don't know what their franchise agreements look like.
It's just, yeah.
But I know that it was when Ace got, and they were Ace at that time, when they got TV, these cable channels, what is it? It's PAG. It's or PEG, PEG channel. It's public education government. So it's I'm learning new acronyms. It's a PEG channel, and I'm not sure what the franchise agreements were.
More to come on that. So is there anything else you have on the feedback or anything, future agenda items?
On the technical advisory, we also got to become ADA compliance with our websites. And we're looking at a company doing that. And they're
Site
gonna charge-
improved, and the finance committee did talk, we
Okay.
brought that up with the site, with the finance committee, as far as that would be in the budget. Thank you.
Okay, so is that it?
Upcoming meeting next week for partnerships, next Wednesday, I think, or Thursday,
Wednesday,
Wednesday,
I think it's Wednesday night,
in
no,
Caledonia.
it's Wednesday, noon, courthouse.
And just a question, how did it go for robotics?
They won their first 1 or 2, and then they lost like kind of a line, and then they won their last 3 or something. So they got like 50th out of, I don't know, 67 or something like that.
Good
And they're-
experience for the kids.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's like, I'm still kind of processing it. It takes a while. It's like what we expose the kids to when we go to that is just
How many kids went?
amazing. There were 12 kids, and a lot of kids had a parent that went with them too, which was very helpful. And we had quite a few mentors as well on the trip. But you know, sometimes they compete with teams that don't speak English, and I was really impressed. And in fact, some of the other kids too. Downstairs, it was this huge convention center, and they had 6 courts going at once. Just incredible. And they had the medium-sized robots on the other side, but in the basement they had the Legos. And they were incredible, and they were from all over the world, these little kids, and the stuff they built was amazing. So, and a lot of our kids love Legos too, they grew up with it, so they were down there, but that, just seeing all that is incredible, and, you
That's
know,
great.
seeing the cutting edge things. And,
Safe trip.
yeah, exposing our kids to all that it's amazing.
Before we adjourn, I would like to publicly thank Marian Gavin for all of her years of service as an elementary school counselor. She has been a rock when it comes to testing over there. She will be very hard to replace. We will find someone to fill the desk, but we'll never find someone to really do everything that she did. So I would like to make sure that we publicly express our gratitude and heartfelt appreciation.
If you talk to any of your legislators, encourage them to talk to Governor Dayton, because he wants to put $123 per student on budgets this year for education. He's putting that in the last bill that's going to be voted on May 21st. So whatever passes or cuts through. I don't know how that's gonna
It's
affect
an
us.
extra $123 per student.
Yes.
That's cool. We can use that. Okay, anything else?
Going back to what Corinne just said, I don't think William will mind, but William told me, and I have told her this before, but he says that she has special powers, that kids go in upset and they all come out happy. He doesn't know what she does in there, but she's really good at her job, so.
She is. William is right, as usual.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about her, so she'll be missed. So, okay, so with that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Ron and
Ron and
Gary.
Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?